the FNL Network talk show.
Hello, and welcome to the FNL Network talk show. I'm your host, David Stowe, along with my co-hosts, Bethany, Corey, Marianne, Lillee, and Linni. Lily's new with us, so how you guys doing today? Welcome.
Doing great.
Well, this is exciting. This is the first time in a long time. Apparently, it's my first time with having 6 different hosts on here, so this is an awesome time. Also, we've got a new cast member. Okay, so that new cast member is Lillee. So Lillee, why don't you say hi to everybody real quick?
Hello, everybody. My name is Lillee. I'm an actress and filmmaker. I actually just came out with my new teaser for a film I'm working on called The Trapper Trap. So I hope you do check it out. I'm really hopeful. It's a comedy, an alien comedy, though. It's
my God.
I love it.
Nice. We like talking about aliens on here.
Yeah.
When is it coming out?
So we're hoping to finish up shooting in April and probably by like May have the final. I'm really proud because everybody who worked on it is just amazing. It's friends. It's just one of those types of projects where it's not like new people. It's like people you just love and you've been dying to work with forever, but you never had the chance. So this is like one of those good spots right now.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I actually have written down these questions for this week. There's some pretty intense questions for those of you that have seen it or have heard about them. But tomorrow we at the FNL Network are up for an award. We're going to be at the Taste Awards tomorrow, so we're real excited about that.
Awesome.
Hopefully that'll lead into it. And it's just like the Oscars. And right now the Oscars, they're like the Super Bowl of arts and entertainment, and in more ways than one. Not only is there a viewership and really high and great anticipation for the annual showcase of superstars, but an insane amount of money gets spent campaigning for their victories. So in 1999, I believe it was a year that would say that it was the ugliest campaign ever between Saving Private Ryan and Shakespeare in Love. And Harvey Weinstein pulled off the win, surprising everyone, in which the studio spent up to $100 million to advertise and get it going. What are your thoughts of this, with studios campaigning and winning rather than actually accolades being awarded to people? And I'm going to go ahead and start off with Bettina.
Okay. Frankly, I know commercialism is important to get people to see movies and watch art, but coming from the viewpoint of I'm an actress, a trained actress, I find it sad that we're not focusing on the craft and the art of what people are seeing, because there are so many films out there, like independent films and off-Broadway shows, and something that's really well done creatively that not enough people are seeing, and yet there's $100 million being spent to see these commercialized films or series. Now, some of them are great. I don't want to even put them down. Some of them are very craftful and awesome. Like I'm watching the show now, The Orville, which I think is brilliant. But then again, Seth MacFarlane, awesome. But there's so many things that don't ever get seen because they don't have enough money to back it. And I'd rather see a chunk of that money go to art projects, or even to help someone who's struggling with a class. They can't afford to take an acting class or filmmaking class or something. And so that's why it's frustrating for me to hear about that, because I think focusing on the craft and the art should be, I don't know, more important.
Kind of like politics. They don't it's whoever has the most money is in the lead, instead of the people that are actually doing the right things. I agree with you 100% on that.
Thank you.
What about you, Marianne?
I'm with Bettina on this one, 100%. I think, we're missing out when we don't get when people with some real talent don't get an award. And it seems to be always come down to money, but I'm with Bettina 100%. I think that it should be based on talent, not based on who has the most money, who can campaign. And I'm going to basically buying their awards. What in the world? No. I mean, I think it should be based on talent. And again, all these independent films and other things that people are missing out on because all the focus is in one place. So Bettina, you said it great.
Thanks.
Well, it used to be pretty good. I mean, there's a reason Star Wars didn't win, even though I wish it would have won all those accolades back in the day. But I mean, think about it, the acting wasn't the greatest acting, but now it's like you said, the most money. What about you, Lillee?
Okay, Star Wars, are you kidding me? I love Star Wars. Every
Absolutely.
single movie. It doesn't matter. Every single movie. Like Kylo Ren, I don't care. I love him. I love those sort of whimsical things. I never read the reviews because when you read the reviews, it like sours what I know I probably would have enjoyed. So when you talk about like campaigning and stuff, it's
Yeah.
so frustrating. I agree with the girls because it's like there's so many artistic things that I feel like you'll never get to see, you'll never get to expand your mind with because money is like just like there you go, goodbye. And
Yeah,
it's honestly very frustrating. I'm a realist. I understand that like there's always going to be people with money and people without, and there's always going to be people who try to, get to the top by paying for it. And it sucks. I mean, the reality of that is it just sucks. You have to work 10 times harder. You have to stump for yourself. And even if you do that, it doesn't mean you're going to win. It doesn't mean you're going to get gold. You just have to, as a filmmaker, realize that I just have to do the best for me because otherwise you're just going to get so jaded very quickly.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I agree 100%. Gotten rid of all the talent, and it's just about who's got the
Yeah.
most money now. What about you, Linni?
Well, I'm enjoying hearing everyone's conversations on this. I really feel like I don't have anything to add because I agree with all of you on this one. When I lived in LA, I lived in LA for 15 years, and I always thought it was so fascinating that around award season, every city bus, every subway, every billboard said for your consideration. And that was just everywhere. So it was whoever had, obviously the production companies, whoever had the most amount of money, they're the ones that had the best campaigns. And so for your consideration was like, it worked for me. I'm like, I absolutely want to go see that film. It's up for an Oscar for your consideration. So knowing that those taglines actually work for votes, I mean, it seems like it's pretty strong marketing.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when you really look at it, whoever markets it is going to get it. And, I mean, look at this year's awards. We'll see how that goes and how it pans out. I mean, I loved Saving Private Ryan. I'm sure Corey has something else to say about that with Shakespeare in Love, right, Corey?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
I mean, I understand some level of campaigning should go on. Some level of campaigning. Buying, not so much, but campaigning does cost money, obviously. Sometimes there are those smaller movies where some actor just pulls something off that, you watch it, you enjoy it, and then a little bit later, you're kind of like, they remind you that, hey, that person was really fantastic and did a great job in this movie or whatever. And I think that, that's great, like I said, to some level of campaigning, just to say, hey, maybe this needs to be acknowledged. Outside of that, yeah, it's become pretty ridiculous. And I do remember that year specifically. I had just got done doing Romeo and Juliet, I think, playing Mercutio in that. And so I was really still into Shakespeare, but I really enjoyed that. And it was a fun movie. I think it's the first time I ever saw Jeffrey Rush in anything, and he was amazing in that. It's definitely the first time I saw Joseph Fiennes, also amazing in that. And the movie's really well done and a lot of fun. But it is not Private Ryan. And Saving Private Ryan, and really, if we're talking awards, you mentioned Star Wars. Can you name another movie that changed the art, the industry, as much as Star Wars did?
No, I agree with you 100%.
Tell me,
I'm just
can you
saying,
tell
if when you go back and look at the acting, you realize, okay,
like
the acting was
Sir Alec Guinness, one
yeah,
of the
well,
greatest. He was phenomenal in that movie, man. You always complained about Luke. I got no problem with it. Mark Hamill's amazing. I don't think the acting and then people say the dialogue's clunky. No, it's not. It did exactly what it was intended to do. It did exactly what it was intended to do. And it didn't just change, it changed everything. There was even a full negative tone going on in the 70s with 70 films. It was like all anti-heroes. Everybody's dying. Everything's turning out horrible. This movie comes along and reminds everybody, hey, we're supposed to be enjoying ourselves, right? And it's right on the heels of Jaws and Spielberg inventing the summer blockbuster. And so me, Dave, I'm one of those, I love independent movies. I love foreign film. I love silent films. I watch everything, but I'm not a hater of the big movies. And Star Wars, big movie. And I don't, sometimes I'm like, that's just popular because it's popular. In fact, unpopular opinion, I didn't like La La Land that much, right? I thought Whiplash the year before that he
That
did the
was
year
the
before
worst. Oh my God, Whiplash. Don't get
it
me
was such a good movie, though.
Oh
I
my
thought it was a
God,
better
no.
movie. It's not a feel-good movie like La La Land, but it was so good, you know?
Oh
But then
God.
when it comes to something like Private Ryan, dude, it spawned Band of Brothers. It spawned it spawned
The Pacific,
yeah, the Pacific as well. You like that one a little bit
Thin
more.
Red
I
Red Line.
Band of Brothers
I
is pretty
hated
untouchable.
Whiplash like so much.
Tell.
Yeah, well, but it also spawned
I think I threw something at the screen. I hated it so much.
Damn.
My husband is a jazz drummer, and like that movie has like nothing to do with how a jazz drummer is, how a jazz drummer learns. It's so insane that it was very frustrating and horrible to watch.
I
Well,
only bring it
I
up
had
because
a
it was one of
drummer that
those.
was a
It
jazz
was one of
drummer.
those like tiny one. You know, it was like it wasn't that big. It just kind of slipped under the radar, and then it got all these awards,
Loved it.
accolades. But
People
before that,
loved
it was just a little sleeper film that turned out like that was a really intense, really good movie. But yeah, but like I was saying about Private Ryan, I mean, you had Medal of Honor, the video game, which turned into COD, which is one of the most popular video games of all time. Like Private Ryan absolutely changed film. It changed the industry. It changed everything. Just like um just like Star Wars did. And like I said, I mean, who even knows what else was even up for Best Picture and won Best Picture the year Star Wars came out? Do people even rewatch those movies? Are they?
I can't
I mean,
remember.
nobody knows. You know what came out? Indiana Jones. What came out that year? Raiders of the Lost Ark. Right? What was the winner that year? So some years, yeah, when you got things like Dance with Wolves and Braveheart and Titanic, and you have these movies that absolutely it's the whole package. And I thought Private Ryan was absolutely the whole package. So I was pretty shocked. Now they gave it to Spielberg for director, and in my memory, it may have happened, but in my memory, that was the first time they kind of split who the best director. You know, Spielberg got best director, but then best film was Shakespeare in Love, and that was really odd to me. I mean, because they almost go hand in hand, almost always go hand in hand, directing and so yeah, some level of campaigning I understand, but at the same time, if what's the point? If you're just buying these things, literally, what is the point of all of this? You're supposed to look at it and go, hey, this is something that needs to be acknowledged. You know, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings needs to be acknowledged. And then sometimes I do agree there are smaller movies that get lost in all of that need to be acknowledged. So, like I said, some level of campaigning, sure, but the whole buying it and the prestige that it's become and some of these new rules for it are just yeah, I don't buy any of that anymore. It's not what it used to be. Not in my opinion, not at all.
Well, let's hope somebody at the Taste Awards didn't over campaign so much that we're not going to get anything tomorrow, right?
I don't mind if
Speaking
they
of
campaign
saving,
on our behalf. I'm fine with that. I'll
speaking of Saving Private Ryan in the military, I saw an article the other day, and it was talking about military veterans and women in the combat zones. And being a military vet myself, I know that this particular topic is still keeping people divided for years. Problems like fraternization, sexual assault, and misogynistic attitudes, you know, are making people still seem to disagree with the topic. So I'm curious, you know, I've talked to people many years about this. I have my own thoughts on it. I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are on women, not in the military, so to speak, but in combat zones in itself. What do you guys think about that? I'll start off with Lillee this time.
I think women could do anything a guy could do. I'm just going to start there. Women could do anything. They could shoot a gun. They could strangle a man. They can use their thighs and crack somebody's neck. They could put cyanide. They could do anything. So I think that any man deciding how a woman should be in a battlefield, I feel very divided. Granted, I've never been on a battlefield, so I can't speak to that either.
Makes sense. What about you, Bettina?
A couple things. I mean, I'm definitely against any kind of misogyny or rape or sexual assault or anything like that. Very against that. On the other hand, I'm very against any kind of war or combat or military. Like the whole idea of it is so against my nature that I can really hardly speak to like having, you know, women in the military. I kind of believe that we shouldn't be fighting it all, that we should all try and find a better way to get along, and that the idea of military is so foreign to me that I can't comment any more than that.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we live in a world that it's
I
going to
know.
happen whether we like it or not. You know, it's
Oh,
been
it's
happening for
horrible.
thousands of years.
It's
Um,
horrible.
Mhm.
Marianne, what about you? What do you think about it?
Well, first of all, Lillee, amen, girl. I love what you said. I agree 100%. A woman can do anything a man can do. If she wants to be in a combat zone, if that's what she wants to do to serve her and protect her country, I think she should be allowed. I don't think we, I as well do not like the idea of any man telling me what to do. With my own life, with my body, it's my decision. So I think a woman should be allowed to have the same rights. If she wants to be in a combat zone, more power to her. Me personally, I don't want to do it. That's not for me. That's not my thing. And I completely understand and sympathize with you, Bettina, when you said that you don't like war. I don't like it either. I can't stand it. I wish so much that everybody could just get along and love each other. But unfortunately, it's not the way this world is. There's always conflict. So, David, I get what you're saying too, is that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm all for women being able to make their own choices.
Okay, man, that's definitely. I mean, let's just get that one out straight right now. We all know women can do pretty much what guys can do in a lot of aspects, especially when it comes to shooting guns. And there's women out there that can probably carry me up a ladder, So I get it. I have my own, but I'll save mine for the end. Of the way I think about it. But Linni, what about you?
I have a question for you because you differentiated combat zone and military. So why do you make that distinction?
So,
Jen?
okay, so my wife was in the military for 20 years, okay, and she knew as well as anybody else that there's always a time that she'd have to go to a place. After the insurgents started coming into play, after 9/11, her number got called up, and she had to go and replace an Army computer tech and IT tech in Iraq. And when we found out what her duties were, it was her duty was to go and disassemble all the computer systems in the area as they were backing out of Iraq and the insurgents are coming in and bombing them. The reason she was going to go out there is because she was replacing the third person killed that was in that job. And although my wife knows and we knew that her time, to come to military, it could be any day you have to go into that position. She was not excited to go. I mean, it hit her hard, like, oh man, here I am. And we both, that's about the time we both started discussing our situation and, the difference. I was frustrated, like, why are they sending you in? You don't need to be going in there. I said, you got yourself in there and you did target practice with a 9mm in boot camp. You don't know how to go out there and shoot an M16. You don't know how to go out there and do all the combat stuff. They haven't taught you that. I was just freaking out myself, even though I know that we're military and that we signed up for that. And that was just me being angry in the very beginning. But for the most part, women have been allowed in the military to do all sorts of things. In fact, I think it was in 2012, I don't remember the exact number in the article, that there was a 4-star general that was a woman. And women can do absolutely everything that anybody else can do. For many, many years, that wasn't allowed. But in a combat zone, you usually have a platoon. And in that platoon, you can have anywhere between 6 to 10 guys in a platoon in itself. And you usually have a medic, or with us as corpsmen, we had 2 medics to our platoon. And the corpsmen, we fight alongside with everybody, do everything everybody else is doing until somebody gets shot, and then everybody needs to lay down cover fire where we go save them and save their lives and then get back into fighting. And I can also say that when you get into combat zones like that, the mission needs to be finished. It needs to be completed. Everybody understands that your mission needs to be completed no matter what. If one of your brothers falls, he can handle himself, we'll come back for him. Either way, we have to complete the mission. For me, it would be if I was in a battle and it was me and Corey, and let's just say you, Linni, and you're with us. Okay, regardless of where you're from, regardless of what you could be the best shooter in our company, or platoon, you could be the strongest, you could be the smartest, everything about it. I know what I was trained and what the enemy was going to do to us, let alone the women. And for me, and I know this is where people can say that, you know, whatever, I'm a gentleman. I grew up as a gentleman. My father, my grandfather, my uncles, my brothers, we opened doors for women. We closed doors for women. We're respectful to women. It's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. For me, I will throw myself in front of a bullet for a woman. That's just who I am. And this is where it differentiates my uncle arguing with me. He said that this is why I wouldn't be in his platoon, you know, and I said, well, here's my deal. If she were to drop, what's going to happen? How am I going to feel about knowing that I just left Linni back there, knowing what these guys are going to do to her? Yes, she accepted it. Yes, she's into it. But for me, I think it will make me hesitate, which I should never do. So either I have the problem where I feel like I have to protect in some way, or I have to move on, if that makes any sense to you. So I got a little bit confused on that one, and I wasn't sure how people would take that. For me, it's more about, I need to protect. Hopefully she could protect me, but I just know what they're going to do to my buddies, let alone a woman herself. And I just could not let that sit on my chest. So that's why I just thought, that would be a tough situation. And I'm not even talking about everywhere we've ever been. There's always, and it just never seems to end. There's always some type of fraternization, and it causes problems. And now you have your boyfriend and girlfriend up there who are in charge, and he's going to send you, hey, Stowe, run up there and, and cover that wall. We'll cover you. Well, why not your girlfriend? It's like, I don't, because I told you to do it. I don't want to lose her. You see what I'm saying? So it's an issue that's complicated. Now, most trained soldiers don't think like that, and they're able to get over that. And when you're in the battle, it doesn't matter. And I think that if it did happen, I wouldn't complain. It's like, all right, it's going to happen. Let's do it. And I'm pretty sure you can handle your own just like I can and Corey can. So that's why I'm asking. I'm just curious how you guys think about that.
So I just have more questions. Okay, so then for instance, with your wife, where she was only trained with the 9mm, was she at all trained with any of the other weapons or any other tactical warfare? In the same way that a man would be trained? Like, was she treated differently in boot camp?
If she was in that particular squadron, or that she was actually going to go with an Army unit as an Air Force tech, IT tech. But no, I know that she shot an M16, but she's not completely trained in combat training. And she'd just be thrown into there, and her job is to get in there and get the work done while everybody else was covering for her. But what happens if everybody's shot? What happens if something goes down? How is she going to protect herself? So it's just little things like that was kind of irritating. But if you ask her, she'll tell you the same thing that Lillee said. And no matter what, she's in the military. I can do what you can do, and she'll tell me flat out, I'd rather not do it. I'd rather you go over there, that kind of a deal. And I get it, and it makes sense. But that's just that's why. So do you have any?
Deep.
What?
That's deep. You're on a field and
Mhm.
have to decide about saving someone or protecting them. I get it.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I know, like my uncle flat out told me, he goes, well, that's why you wouldn't be in my platoon, and he was an Army scout. I was Navy corpsman for the 1st Tanks Battalion. So, and I was like, and we argued it. I'm like, what do you mean I wouldn't be in your platoon? That makes no sense to me. He goes, yeah, because everybody can do their job. And I'm like, so what he was saying is you get the mission done, regardless if it's a man or a woman with you, and who cares what they're going to do to her? We'll go back for her, because you always go back and you protect and you get them out of there, dead or alive, So I don't know. It's just a thought process on that one. What about you, Corey?
Yeah, well, buckle up, because I got a difference of opinion here on a lot of this. First of all, with the assumption that women can do everything that men can, must come the assumption, therefore, that men can do everything women can do. And clearly that's not true, right? Women have children. Men can't have children. Are we on that front? When women have those children, they have different rules at the job than men do. When women are pregnant with a child, they have different rights that men do not have in terms of whether or not they want to keep the child. Right? Even having that discussion, the man is automatically, nope, man doesn't get to have a discussion. He doesn't get to be a part of this. Right? And that's another one of those, women can always say, oh, women can do anything men can do. But when a man walks around and said, man can do anything a woman can do, it's a very different reaction from most people. So I don't necessarily think that's not necessarily true. I don't think women can do anything men can do. I think a woman could. There may be women out there who are capable. And my belief is that if you're capable of doing something, I've never met one in my life, but if David or I found the woman that could carry David up a ladder in a fire, sure. I'm not against her being a firefighter. I just, the reality of the world is how often do I actually see that? The reality of the world comes down to things like we play football. There's no professional women's football. There's not even a lot of women playing high school. David knows from his days in kinesiology, there's very specific reasons. The female brain inside the cavity is very different from the male. We can take hits. We're meant to be stupid and hit our heads against the walls and be able to survive, right? But it causes damage a little bit more. Even boxing and things of that nature, men could box for a lot longer before they're going to run into all of the same brain damage that might occur with women, right? That's number one. Number two, nobody likes war, like Bettina was talking about, but there's always going to be villains. There's always going to be bullies. No matter how much we all want to get along, there are going to be people out there. And I'm telling you, from a very young age, boys grow up thinking about protecting the people they love, right? There's nothing more, like, nobody wants to go and die. And like the idea that they used to, like the Vikings used to go out and die in a blaze of glory, and that was the best way to die. The real understanding of what that means to us is not that we just want to go die in war. It just means there's no greater way to show love, in our opinion, than to literally give our lives over to someone else, right? And that's in protection, that's in this, that's in all, and that's within our nature. And it's also within our nature to protect the women and children around us. That's just the thing. And yes, what David's talking about is it's an age-old discussion. It's not just the U.S. military that talked about this. It's been over the course of history. Why women have been so infrequently used on the front lines. Some of it has to do with protecting the women and things of that nature. Part of it also has to do with a lot of those guys are going to abandon some of their missions, or they're going to abandon some of the things that they know they should not abandon, because we are not going to be able to sit there and watch a woman suffering behind us or near us. Right.
Some of the best snipers in Russia were women too, though, but I see what you're saying.
Like I said, some of the best, but were they the best? Because that brings me to my next point. If I want somebody protecting me, or if I want somebody protecting my kids, if I want somebody protecting my country, right? This is like the age-old question when you talk about, who's going to be in your corner. Is it going to be the Hulk, or is it going to be this other superhero? We always talk about all the superheroes, but when we're talking about real men and women, there's no such thing as superheroes by that rationale. So again, if I want a football team, I want the strongest, fastest, best guys on my football team to win. If I want a basketball team, same exact thing. I want to win wars. I want the biggest, the baddest, the best, the strongest. That's what I want. Now, if a woman comes along that can match all of that with the best of the best, sure. But, and again, I'm not knocking it. My nieces are fantastic in basketball, and I love watching their basketball games, and it's fun, and I think they should have it. But they have the WNBA. But the truth of the WNBA is, a lot of them, some of the best players in the WNBA probably couldn't beat some of the state champions of the boys' high school basketball teams, right? It's not a knock. It's just a reality.
Well, and Cheryl, I've met Cheryl Miller, who was like the first for the WNBA, and she would actually agree with you, Corey, and saying this is why women, and we're not going off topic, but this is why women's sports are so impactful and powerful, because it finally gives women a place to succeed in their own and their ability to compete in the way in which they were created to compete. So I heard her to give a keynote speak. I heard her do a panel. I've heard her do a ton of stuff on women's sports, and the fact that she is like so pro women that women need to have their own sport. I totally hear what you're saying in that capacity.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be an a-hole at all. I'm saying it's a reality. Like Serena Williams would tell you, she's the top in her sport, but you're going down to like the dude that's in 125th place in the males professional before you're getting somewhere where she might not be embarrassed on the court with them. That's her words too, by the way. I mean, that's her opinion about it. So it's not a matter of, and then you take guys, and there's other things, like we get a cold, and sometimes when we get a cold, we want to be babied, and we don't have any of the endurance and strength that you guys do to have children and everything else, right? There are differences, and I'm all about celebrating differences. When I was a kid, that sounded silly, because I'm like, oh yeah, we celebrate our differences. But then I remember a priest saying one time, he was like, hey, I'll bet on your wedding night you celebrated your differences. And I was like, yeah, I was pretty happy. That was pretty nice, and that started making sense about like, my wife is amazing. She's fantastic. I would say she's stronger than me in a lot of ways, but I would never be unrealistic and say that if there was some group of dudes trying to get into my house, I'm not going to give her the crowbar and send her downstairs. Right. Now, I'm not saying there's not some women. I'm not saying women. I'm saying a woman, possibly. There are situations. There are definitely times. But I think the fact that women and men have differences should be celebrated. And I think those differences between us are what make us better. This is what makes us one whole. Right. And every time that we want to ignore those differences, that's when we run into I think, more problems than we should be having. Even not just in individual with our marriages and everything else, but even as a society, like, for instance, I have a daughter. I'm all for my daughter going to the military. I do not want my daughter in selective service. I do not want my daughter being drafted. I do not want anybody's daughter being drafted. Right. And I'm telling you across the board, from a man's perspective, across the board, that is how we all feel about women, our daughters. There's this protectiveness, and the idea that they would go out and die for us, it just runs completely counter to who we are as beings, if you will, right? So I'm not a fan of them being in combat for all the reasons David listed, for the reasons of who do we want attacking on our behalf, who do we want protecting us, who do we want our shield to be, the biggest, the bright, strong, not brightest, that could be anybody, but biggest, the strongest, the baddest.
Good catch.
Yeah. Dude, my wife's
We're
smarter than me.
outnumbered here, man.
My wife's smarter than me, I promise.
I'm
like
looking at all their faces right now. I'm going, uh-oh.
Well, like David said, we were raised by very strong women. My mom, right? My sister, and my wife and his wife, right? We're around very strong women, opinionated women, strong women, powerful women. And they still ask us to go and open the jar. They still ask us to climb up the high spots and carry things down, right? There's lots of things that we rely on them for, and there's lots of things they rely on us for. And maybe they're doing it because, we'll get our feelings hurt if they don't.
If
right?
we open the jar without you,
maybe get upset.
This discussion is interesting because I feel like on both sides, very good points. There are differences, but women could do exactly the same. That's my opinion. But it sounds like a lot of a you issue, not you, Corey. I mean, men, that they feel like they have to be the protector and the savior. And my whole life has never been a man, even my dad, saving me. I've seen my mom busting her ass off, protecting me in precarious situations. I've never seen a man do that for me.
Right.
So for me, my experience shows me something different. That doesn't mean you're wrong. That doesn't mean I'm right either, by the way.
I don't want to be offensive here at all. But you're safe and secure right now because a bunch of young men went off and died for us. They have done that for you. It has been done. Right.
Yes,
and historically, it is the men who have gone and done that. It is the young men in far greater numbers that have done that and have died for this country and continue to do so and will continue to do so.
Okay.
And so as a personal experience, I don't mean any offense by it, but as a personal experience, you could say, yes, no one's stepped into that, but we live within secured borders. We live within a secured country. We live in a free country. We live in a democratic republic because of the bloodshed by men and, yes, some women before us as well. But historically, it is generally the men, right? And there are differences mentally anyways. I mean, we're much more likely to commit suicide as well, right? If you start going through the lists of differences between what happens to men and what happens to women, we all have our struggles and we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. That's all I'm saying. Now, it doesn't mean that a woman can't go out and forge her way in this world. And I'm not
I don't feel like you're saying
I'm not saying it like that at all.
No. I totally
I get what you were saying.
I do not think that. I know what you're saying. I'm just adding on.
Yeah,
I'm
I know.
scared of my wife, but I guarantee you, if
Oh, no.
zombie apocalypse hit, she's gonna tap me on the shoulder and say, "Get your ass down there and get outside and protect." You know, even though she'll want to come out. You know, that it happened a couple of weeks ago in the store. There's something happened. I said, "Here, stay here." And by the time it was all said and done, and I turned around, she was right next to me. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "You think I'm gonna let you get in there and get beat up on your own?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" But at the end of the day, I like everybody's, you know, what you're saying. I mean, it's this is why it's such a talked about and argued about topic, because of that fact. And you know, everybody has their point of view, and I guess when you're in that situation is when it really counts. So since we started off the show with the vile human Harvey Weinstein's name, and everybody knows that they don't like him, which caused the Me Too movement to become a huge topic in the news. One of the things that kept coming up, and I've heard this many times before, is victim blaming. It started to be thrown around a lot, and as we're discussing it, should we discuss the victims as completely blameless, or should we be discussing some level of personal accountability, personal responsibility, and personal safety for some cases? And you know, I just want to know, I didn't want everybody to think I'm saying, oh, victim blaming. You know, there's a difference. Okay, when somebody, you know, a criminal says, well, yeah, she walked in and she made it easy for me. Okay, yeah, that's victim blaming. You know, she was walking in the store, she wasn't accepting it. I have heard criminals, because I like true crime, and I've read into the psychology behind a lot of these criminals, and a lot of them said, yeah, I seen her in the bar, and you know, that girl over there had so many clothes on, I knew that it would be a pain in the butt, and she came in with one outfit that I can get rid of real quick, and it made it easy for me. I'm not saying it was on her. I'm not saying that she went in there thinking that was going to happen. So the question I got 3 different examples, and I'm wondering if I should wait to the end to tell you guys, or I should just say it first. What do you guys want to hear?
I think say it.
All right, I might as well say it. So my first example of this is what I'm talking about is I've got daughters, so I know exactly what it means. When I was when I was a lead singer for a band, we had a preset the day before we were doing a sound check. I walked in the bar, had a t-shirt, sweater on, wasn't really, you know, looking for nothing, had a beer, sitting down, hanging out. You know, a couple of girls came up to flirt. You know, that's what they do at the bar. It's a bar. I understand. You know, I'm used to calling it a meat market. You know, you go in there, you know what's going to happen. My manager comes in about an hour later and starts talking on, and then comes over and she goes, "Hey, this is Dave Stowe. He's going to be the lead singer for the band tomorrow night." Before the end of the night, every single girl in the entire bar wanted to be my friend. You know, I understood what that meant. And I understood that, okay, so now it's being projected as I'm somebody that either is going to be famous, I'm either going to be the talk of the show, I'm going to make them feel good about themselves that night, whatever. But I came to a show with a button up all the way up to my neck. Well, it was one button undone. And my manager, before I go on, she goes, no. And she unbuttons it all the way down to my, halfway down my stomach. I'm like, whoa, now I look gay. And the first thing she says, she's like, "It doesn't matter. It's sex appeal. Shut up and go out there." And I was like, all right. So I get it. I understand what sex appeal means. So if I were to walk into a bar or a club, so to speak, and I'm wearing a sweater and a jacket, you know, I might get lucky and find somebody. I might just go in there and have a beer and then leave. But if I go in there with a t-shirt on that super thin that I can probably shred it off like a Chippendale in a bar, you know, I know what I'm looking for. I know exactly what I'm going in there to do. So the second example, what I'm saying is, if I were to walk into a lion's den, okay, I know that there's some lions in there that are going to probably all of them want to eat me. I'm hoping that they don't. I'm not going to be scared to death to go in there at a certain point. But if I go in there and plaster myself up with some raw meat, I'm asking for some trouble there. And now I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to get these people to come at me. Does that mean that girls going to a bar are looking for somebody that's going to be crazy like that? Absolutely, positively not. 9 times out of 10, most of the guys that you're in there, my mom told me a long time ago, you're never going to meet your wife in a bar. Don't do it. You know, and I get it. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to have some good guys in there that probably you don't like, you might like. There's always going to be that one line. There's always going to be that one guy. And why? Because I'm a guy. I know what guys think. I know guys how they project themselves. I know what they're looking for. I know the signs. And I can see too that there's always one asshole in the entire room that's going to ruin it for everybody, or hurt that girl, or get into her head, or do something. And I've seen this being a bouncer, being around clubs for many, many years, being a DJ. I've seen this so many times. It was irritating. So that when I told my daughters, don't go out into public looking like that. You don't have to dress like that. Why are you dressing like that? You're just asking for people to look at you. And she'd get mad at me, like, what are you talking about? You know, that's not the case. I'm like, would you go to church like that? You know, what's the point of going to church like that? You trying to pick up a date at church? You know, I understand it. So my question is, it's not as about victim blaming, such as, you know, she went in there looking for it, she asked for it, she deserves it. Absolutely, positively not. The guy deserves to get dropped to the bottom of the ocean and tortured, for all I care. What I'm saying is, what element do we look into for personal accountability? Got a responsibility, have a backup plan, have somebody preparing you. You know, I mean, I guess this all stemmed off of the Bill Cosby situation, when, you know, we all grew up loving Bill Cosby. I know I loved him growing up. I couldn't believe it when I heard the stories. I'm like, what's going on? Is this part of the, I just thought it was another thing that, well, just throw somebody else under the bus. When I finally found out what was going on, you know, I was having a conversation with my daughters, and it came to I found out that it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and this girl went over to his hotel room. I think it was like 2 in the morning. And she'd been drinking. She knows he'd been drinking. I asked my daughter, I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, so she says that he was drunk, she was drunk. She went over to meet with him at 2 a.m. in his hotel room for some wisdom. I don't know. I don't buy it. Nothing happens after 12 o'clock that's good. And I can guarantee you that's, you know, that's not what happened. You know, she got drugged. It sucked. It was stupid. He deserves what he got. You know, it's ridiculous. And I'm sorry about that. And, you know, but my question when I said, hey, wait a minute, what is she doing going over there in the first place? What was she looking for? You know, that's where I got attacked as victim blame. So I want to know what you guys' thoughts on that. What about you, Linni?
So my brain is gone like spaghetti against a wall. There's so many different things here. I used to volunteer with an organization called Peace Over Violence. It was for women who have been sexually assaulted or have been victims of domestic violence and have survived those. And then what did they do with their life after that? And the moments where someone has been victimized, and like, let's talk about this specifically. A female who has been victimized by a man, 9 times out of 10, they know the person. It's really someone they know. It's very rare for it to be in a place where they didn't know. It was on some alley, street corner. They didn't know them. That's a very rare thing. We tend to go to that and say that that's the majority of the incidences, and that's not necessarily true. Yeah. So that's where a lot of the stories, oh, she's wearing her skirt. It's a little too short. Da, 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 da. What's the attention she's getting? Oh, she came to a bar. Now she's walking in the alleyway and she gets raped. Those incidents are so rare, and yet we apply this blanket statement to that. But if we look at that, typically it's in a grooming situation where a man has come in who has power, looks like they have authority, and they're coming in at whether, like Cosby, whether it's a father figure, whether it's someone in power, that they then are saying, hey, I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. Why don't you come over to my apartment? Because I can really help you with this. Oh, you're crying? You can lean on my shoulder. It's those incidences where women have been preyed upon in a weak state, where they're emotional, and then being said, why don't you come over here? I'll protect you. I'll comfort you. And then they're attacked. So none of those times at all would there ever be a stance where it's victim blaming by any means, because they chose to put their trust into someone that they knew, who took advantage of the trust. And that betrayal that goes so deep, these women deal with that for years and years and years and years and years. So I would love for it to be in the opposite way. Where in society are we actually teaching men to be men? And as both of you guys have talked about, is you want to protect and you want to provide. And that somehow that characteristic is starting to go away in our culture, where now, so like Lily's perfect example, I'm going to use you, Lillee. She's saying that her mom was her protector. Absolutely. When men don't stand up, women become the protectors. So in these incidences, when women experience that type of victimization, whether it's sexual assault or rape or whatever it is, who do they call? They don't call another boy. They call their mom, they call their girlfriend, they call another woman that they trust to come and get them, because their trust in men has been so violated. And we know that then it goes into marriages, and then their marriages can be destroyed because of something that happened to them 10, 15 years ago. Like, fact that a man has any sort of evilness, evil intent to say, I'm going to prey on you, I'm going to use your emotions to my benefit, and then I'm going to make sure I'm on top of you and rape you. Those types of incidences are so mind-boggling to me because it's such a psyche game more than it is a power play. The power play physically, it's much more mental. And so that's where I'm like, as men in society here, I am raising my girls to make sure that they see green flags in men. I don't have to teach them the red flags, and although I do, they'll see that very instantly because they know the green flags. What are the green flags for how you look at a man to know that they're going to treat you well? There will be zero manipulation. Any ounce of manipulation, bye-bye. So those things, when I'm a firm believer that men and women could be friends, but if there's manipulation from a man to a woman, that friendship needs to be gone instantly because it's going to lead to something else. So that, anyway, I could go on and on and on. I'll stop myself here.
That was actually an excellent answer, and I kind of wish my daughters would have told me that back then, because I probably wouldn't have argued that long. I mean, that I didn't think of it in the fact that, I guess I didn't know it. Like I said, at the time, I still didn't know a lot about the story. And what you're saying is that he was grooming her and was friends with her for a while. I can understand that concept. I mean, that would help me not argue with her as long as we did. So that's definitely very, very good. Yeah, I like that. What about you, Lillee?
I think that Linni took my breath away. I mean, what she
It was amazing. It was a good one.
I mean, incredible. And I think that people should watch this and hear that, because that's a very important message. I think the only thing I'm going to say is, let's take Cosby, these women, going over and stuff, and he drugs them. Nobody goes to get drugged or something like that to happen. That's all I'm going to say.
No.
True. Marianne, what about you?
Oh, Linni, thank you. That was amazing. So I have some personal experience with this. My very first experience being abused by a man. He was a pastor, Christian, very involved in church, groomed me, got me to trust him. The next person in my life, well, not the next, but one of the next to do that was a cop. So I completely identify with what Linni is saying. Is these are positions where you are supposed to trust and look up to these people. And instead, in my case, I was abused. I was taken advantage of. Do all of the people that hold this title do that? Absolutely not. There are some very good ones. And we need law enforcement. We need people that are going to help others. But for me personally, I had low confidence at the time. I had low self-esteem and low self-worth. Unfortunately, that made me a target. But I would not say it was my fault that the things happened to me. Those men made those choices. And I do think men should be protectors. Men should be providers for their families and for people that they love. But unfortunately, there's always going to be some bad. There's always going to be some bad ones out there. And unfortunately, I experienced that. So I think it's great to empower women. And as sad as it is, that we do need to be careful when we go out in public. We need to be mindful of our surroundings. Like when I leave the grocery store, I look left and right. Or when I leave any store, I look left and right. I'm careful where I go because there are bad people out there, period. There's always going to be bad people out there. So that's my take on that topic.
That's very good input. I like that. Definitely. And you're right. I got 4 daughters. I have a wife. I have sisters. I even do that with my students at school. The female students I get very protective over, and they come to me a lot for questions and advice, and I don't let the guys talk to them the way they do. I'm trying to teach them how to be respectful, how to be responsible, whether they like it or not. It's just, it's a role that they're kind of born into, and it's just what I've always been taught, and it's how I know. And I absolutely put women on a pedestal. And that is why it bugged me so much when she said that I was, victim blaming. I'm like, I'm not victim blaming. I guess as a dad, that's the first thing I'm saying. Like, why the hell are you wearing that hoochie mama outfit when you're going out there? Don't you know what guys are going to look at? And then it's like, oh, be quiet. You don't know what you're talking about. You're my dad. Stuff like that. So I get it. What about you, Bettina?
I got a few things to say. First of all, Linni, again, that was brilliant. I myself was a victim of being drugged by my doctor. So
Oh,
again, I'm
man.
saying, yeah, less than a week, by the way. And
Ooh.
it was horrible. I was like kidnapped, drugged, horrible. This was 45 years ago, so it was a really long time ago.
Hmm.
And it took me a
Oh,
long time to get over it. A long time to trust men again. It was
uh,
quite a bad situation. Um, yeah, so as you said, it's by someone you know or someone in authority that is like, pulling you in a certain way. I was young and I didn't know. So,
Mm.
I got pulled into that. So I think it's very dangerous to be blaming the women in any situation because it's like a fire in our society that we need to put out right now and to just kind of focus on that to like change society by putting out the fire without focusing at all on like, oh, it's the woman's fault. Because maybe once in a blue moon, there might be something that is their fault that they knew what they were getting into, but it's so rare and uncommon that we really shouldn't be thinking that way at all. Just focus on the men and what they're doing to try and like make things different. And then I wanted to say on a side note, like I feel like I have grown a lot and I've learned to trust men. And now I particularly love men. I was particularly moved by you guys today, like the stories about how you love to protect women and, almost like give your lives for women. Like I was so touched by it and just kind of, it's just like an example of, I think, how it's better to feel safe and protected and know that our men are standing up for us and will do anything for us. Like, what a great, secure feeling than to walk around being terrified. So I think that's like the society we want to perpetuate, like to let men do their protective thing and let us feel protected and safe.
Good. I like that. That's a good one. I mean, that's crazy. Your doctor.
Yeah.
um,
That,
And
that
I
is,
was not here. I was living in Israel. I was a kid. I was living in Israel. I was like 20 years old.
man.
It was a long, but it was a doctor that I was going to for some asthma attacks I was having. So, you
Sorry
know,
to hear that. Sorry to hear that.
thank you. Thank
Well, Corey, what's your take on this?
you.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna try to hit some of the points here. First of all, you were pointing out Cosby. She's going over at 2 o'clock in the morning. He's drunk. She's drunk. My question in that situation, or the counter side of that, David, is like, why did he need to drug her? If she's willing to come over at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're both drunk. That you're right. It seems like she's walking into a situation where, as a man, you're kind of like, how do you not know what's going on here? How are you not aware? And so it was amazing that Linni brought that up because, like she said, the grooming and that idea that they're drawing you into this position of trusting and believing. And of course, to that, there's also, the same thing does happen to young boys and males as well.
Right.
The
Especially in Hollywood.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yes, yes, and it is from the same, like exactly like you're saying, it's people they know, it's the position of authority. So I've never looked at those exact statistics, but I would be curious how often it is a person of authority. Like I'm willing to bet, like Linni's pointing out, it's probably far more often, right? Is that what you were saying? Is that the actual statistic, or
Yes. Yes. It's very rare for it to be someone you don't know at all.
Yeah.
right? And so, of course, for that one, we all immediately, for most guys, it is kind of one of those things where we're like, dress modestly, and these are the things that we say. And then I'm not a fan of when they would scream, "Oh, you're victim blaming." We're not victim blaming. Like if I got a daughter and she's going somewhere and I can't be there to protect her, the best I can do is say, "Watch out, be careful. Look where you do. Look, look both ways before you cross the road." So saying to dress modestly before you go somewhere, saying watch out is us recognizing, because we're fully aware. We are fully aware. We are a bunch of sharks. Our women, our children are guppies that swim with us. So what we can handle, is a very different thing from what we want our children or our daughters or anyone else. So, and it's interesting. I'd heard, and I heard this just recently too. They were taking this poll and asking women, what would you do if, one day all of a sudden all of the men disappeared off the planet? And I guess the overwhelming response was, I would go out and walk at night. Right. And
Mm,
it's like, really? Like the majority of them are saying they go outside and walk at night. And I hadn't considered that because I'm like, obviously, again, there's places even we're like, yeah, don't go down that alley. Yeah, you don't do this, you don't do that, you know. And I think a lot of us men have this, even when we're boys, have this instinct. David can speak to this too. I'll walk into a building on a night where we're just showing up to have a good time or a good dinner and all our family's there. We know this is a safe environment, but it doesn't matter. Somewhere in the back of our mind, we're like, that's the exit. That's the exit. That's a tool that could protect me. That's, you know, this or that. This, I can get them behind me. Like, it's this instantaneous thing in our heads. We're just always aware that the world, not even just
It's a
other
dangerous
people.
place.
Yeah, not even other people, but the universe we live in is constantly trying to kill us, right? It just seems like there's so much danger out there.
But I would rather that be said to my girls, hey, this is self-defense. This is how you protect yourself versus rape culture of, hey, be careful how you dress. Like I was raised in an environment where it was 100% rape culture. I was to the point that it was don't smile, don't be too friendly, don't give them the wrong idea. So much about what was my brother told any of that? Not at all. So I'd rather it be so much more about it has nothing to do what we're wearing, but has everything to do with how we are going to make sure that we have a society that equally respects each other. And it doesn't matter what we dress or look like, but it does matter about how we treat each other. And that's where I'm like, that's the value that's missing that needs to be taught.
Well, I agree with you. You know, that was another point I was going to get to. And I do agree with you. I'm just to that point was just saying I know from most of us, when we say things like that, nobody's trying to victim shame or anything of that nature. It's just sometimes we're helpless to help you. You know, sometimes we're helpless to help our children. And all we know to do is say, hey, you know, and throw the warnings out. Does that make sense? That's all I'm saying to that one. Now, the point that you brought up was that like how often it's the random situation. Otherwise, I'd point out that like, you know, you jump in the ocean, there's sharks, you get bit by a shark, you know, anybody could say, well, you shouldn't have swam in the ocean. and oftentimes we're even like, well, that's their territory. We don't even blame the sharks, right? That's their territory. So sure, walking down a dark alley in the middle of the night, half dressed, dumb. But clearly, as you pointed out, that's not what we're talking about with the majority of these cases at all. But to what you are saying, there's a word or a phrase being thrown around all the time now called toxic masculinity, right? And you were asking, where is this being taught? It's being taught by guys like me and David and most of the real men. And I, as men, we talk about who's real men and who are not, who are just children that grew up in men's bodies. But real men, we admire masculinity. Why? Because of what I spoke to in the last question, right? I have to be the strongest, the best, so that I can do the protecting that I'm capable of doing. I got to keep myself aware, in shape, sharp, ready to always be protecting. I'm going to teach this to my boys just as much as I'm teaching them to open the door, pull the chair out for your sister and your mom. And of course, trust me, the mama bear thing is very real as well, right? We were talking about earlier. If I wasn't home with the crowbar, my wife would be out there swinging that thing around and would do some damage, I promise. But I don't like the idea that anytime we're talking about any form of masculinity and trying to teach our boys what it is to be masculine, why is masculinity automatically an evil thing right now? I don't like the term toxic masculinity. I know that's true because we're all aware, but these guys that are in most of the situations that are the predators, just like serial killers, just like anyone else, they have a history, they have patterns.
Yeah.
They're
not usually the masculine
by
ones.
real men, right? Sorry,
Right.
my voice is getting dry.
Right, exactly. And that's not toxic masculinity is exactly that. It is the perpetrator. But to be masculine, that is what's needed in this world. And so yeah, it's two different worlds.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is I want to see a little bit more separation of that because it almost seems like we're running in the opposite, you know, throwing the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to a lot of things. And like, you know, we're gonna love our football, we're gonna love all these things. You know, and I've always looked at us as like, and I talked to my wife about this, like almost like we're grizzly bears, right? Again, when they talk about the female fantasy, most of the time it's pirates or like the Beauty and the Beast scenario and vampires, right? They're like a lot of women are into this because the idea of us being these big, strong beasts that you guys can tame, young girls just go for it. And that's why the Twilight and all that stuff was so huge, right? But to me, there's a reality. And that's why I was saying, you know, it does go into the context of what we were talking about earlier. If most women are to say that if men weren't here, I'd walk around at night, still speaks to what I was saying before, that the reality of the situation is that most of us are stronger. Most of us are more dangerous. Most of us can overpower more often than not. And therefore, more of us are necessary for the protective aspect of that as well. And that includes, like you were saying, raising these guys right, because other than the victims themselves, nobody hates the Weinsteins more than real men. The ones that want our boys and our daughters and our children, nobody, we hate them as much as we hate the Hitlers of the world. These are the people we're talking about, that as much as we hate war, we know they're out there. From the moment my precious baby, my daughter, is born, I know they're out there. This is my instinct, just like any other animal out there. It's my instinct to protect and take care of them. And I'm raising them up because one day they need to be that grizzly bear. You need the beast, you need the vampire, you need the pirate on your side, and you're going to soothe the inside. You're going to soothe that beast. And now you have this grizzly on your side, there to protect you and look out for you. But we could just as much be the villain. We could just as easily be the villain, because we can overpower, because we can abuse that position, right? It's not to say women can't be manipulative and all of the same as well, of course. But as men, we're very aware of that capability and the things that we stifle in ourselves. And that's not to say we're like, oh, it's so hard to stifle these feelings. No, we hate it with a passion. Those are abhorrent thoughts and abhorrent feelings, but we know that they exist in people out there, right? And that's all it's about for us when we say, like, when we're talking modesty and things like that. I don't want to control women. I don't want masks on the faces. I'm not saying you should look beautiful. You should walk outside, look gorgeous, look beautiful, be yourself. You should be able to walk out and feel safe and protected. But it's not always the reality of the situation, right? So that's the point to the ones where, any level of blame, I don't blame them. I just think some level of self-responsibility, some level of realizing, hey, is this a danger? Is this person dangerous? Maybe I should ask another man, what do you think about this guy? Because 9 out of 10 times we're going to tell you, nah, that dude's a snake. Can't even tell you how many times I've told girls, that guy's a snake, he's a dog, and they'll go anyways. And then they'll come crying back afterwards. Like, I told you after knowing the guy for 5 minutes, like we
Well,
recognize.
for what it's worth, I taught all my daughters how to fight, at a very early age. And sometimes it got me in trouble, but well, guys, that was a very, very, man, we went even longer than we normally do. That was a great conversation, real in depth. You guys are all strong women in your own, just so you guys know. I love getting on here and talking to you guys. I look forward to being able to meet everybody in person when they finally get out to LA, or vice versa. So thanks for coming out tonight, guys. It was a lot of fun. Watch us tomorrow night on the Taste Awards, as we're winning with FNL. And you guys have a great weekend and enjoy yourselves. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.